going on, everybody? I'm dear Ashley Grace, and welcome back to the Culture Voyage. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the time Moesha caught Miles smoking that twin. Wow. So we're in season 4 of Moesha, and the episode opens with a PSA. Now we know in the 90s, a PSA either meant drugs, violence, sex, or a little bit of all three.
Hi, tonight's episode of Moesha is one that we truly don't want you to miss. We're examining a controversial subject that's sure to prompt a lot of comments and questions.
And that's why we're urging you to regard this episode as family viewing.
So at this point, we're coming off the heels of when Moesha moved out because Frank went ballistic on her because he caught her at a co-ed slumber party coming down the stairs with Jeremy, aka Usher. And so because Moesha felt like Frank didn't respect her, she decided to move out, to which she has now been living with Andale for about 5 months now. But they decided to have a big kumbaya, and now Moesha is back in the home. But now that she's back in the home, she feels like she and her dad... So this is their spring cleaning time, I guess, and Dee is on a warpath. She has everybody in the house cleaning, except for Frank, because Frank has to go to work, allegedly. Well, come to find out, he doesn't have to go to work. He just...
Frank, come over here. Miles, go to your room.
But you just told me to sweep.
Miles?
It's a woman's prerogative to change her mind, son. Get used to it.
So come to find out, the reason why she tells Miles this is because the first time in a long time, Frank defends Moesha. It's like, listen, Moesha has done some things, but drugs is not one of them.
You don't suppose it's Moesha's?
Oh, Dee, baby, Moesha's done a lot of stuff, but drugs, I don't think so.
And it's like, listen, Moesha has not been here in 5 months. We don't know what she's been doing since she ain't been here. All signs point to Moesha. So now they're waiting on Moesha to come home. Frank and Miles are playing chess. Frank's wheels are spinning. He can't even concentrate on the game. To which then Dee runs in and says, listen, Moesha is here. And once again, they dismiss Miles and tell him to go to his room. And at this point, I'm thinking Miles is about to turn into Judy Winslow from Family Matters and never come down them stairs again. To which then, not even saying, hello, how you doing, says, Moesha, is this yours? And brings out the joint. And Moesha was like, no, that's not mine. So Dee's like, well, how did it get into our house? And Moesha was like, I don't know. And then Frank's like, well, was it one of your friends? And Moesha's like, my friends don't do drugs. Frank is like, oh, really? And she's like, if they did, they wouldn't disrespect me or my home and bring it into this house. To which Dee's like, well, it didn't grow in the couch. And then Moesha, rightfully so, said, well, I'm not the only one with friends. Maybe one of y'all friends dropped it. And then Frank's like, now watch it now. And then Moesha's like, oh, so I'm the only person who can have friends who could possibly smoke? And Frank's like, well, I know my friends. And Moesha's like, well, I know my friends. And Dee got the nerve to say, Moesha, if you did it, you can just tell us. Like, come outside, Moesha. We ain't gonna jump you. To which, once again, Moesha says, I told you once before, it's not mine. Then she was like, what? Y'all think I'm gonna take a drug test or something? And Frank was like, you know what? That's not a bad idea. And Moesha's like,
You know what? I'm so sorry that you guys can't trust me. But I'm not taking anybody's drug test.
Oh, we'll see about that.
and once again, here we are with Frank being controlling again. So now we're at the den, and at this point, everybody has heard the news that Mo's parents thinks that she does drugs. To which then Uncle Bernie tries to talk to Andale about it to see if she can talk some sense into Moesha taking the drug test so she can get it out the way. At this point, Andale, Uncle Bernie, her friends, everyone is trying to convince Moesha that she needs to take this test, because if she just takes it, then it proves that she is not doing drugs. And to Moesha's point, it's not about taking the test. It's the fact that it is her personal right to, one, not have to, but as well for her parents to trust her, especially if they're in this newfound place where they're both going to trust and respect each other. Keen finally says, listen, you and your dad have finally gotten to a good point. If it means have to take this test to prove something that we all know isn't true, then just do it.
The test. Now look, Mo, sometimes you have to pick your battles. And you know how you and Mr. Mitch get. Now, is it really worth going through all that again over something that we know you didn't do?
So in the next scene, we see that Dee and Frank, They're talking for a little bit and they're asking questions about the accuracy of the test and how long it takes and things of that nature. To which then she's like, it's accurate and just know that we catch the bad guys. And they're like, no, Moesha isn't a bad kid. She's actually a really good kid. And the tech is like, so y'all want a drug test for a good kid? Then Moesha comes in and she sees her dad and Dee. And she asks who this person is sitting on the couch, to which they don't even say hello. They just give her a cup and say, fill it up and no topping off. And Moesha looks understandably and visibly irritated.
You know what? I was hoping that I could come home and discuss this with you. I was going to take the high road and take the test. But you can forget that now.
To which then now Dee and Frank are looking dumbfounded. And then here come Dee talking about, you know what? I don't know, Frank. Maybe she didn't do it. You were the ringleader who said that all signs point to Moesha in this whole thing. And Frank was like, what do you mean you don't think that is her? And she's like, well, I've seen kids lie to me and she don't look like she lying. I don't know if we were right this time. And Frank was like, listen, I think that she still needs to take this test. And Dee's like, well, how are you going to make her take a test? And Frank's like, I don't know. I don't know at this point. So in the next scene, we see Moesha back at the house. She's calling in to work because she left something to let them know she's going to be late. Then she notices to which then she's like, well, you going to tell Dee and Dad what's going on because you're not going to be smoking anymore. So in the next scene, we see Moesha, Frank, and Dee all in the kitchen as Moesha explains how she found out Miles was smoking. And then you got Dee up here.
Moesha, are you sure? Honey, maybe it was a cigarette.
As if that's better. So Moesha's like, listen, unless they have an air freshener that smells like weed, that boy's up there smoking. So Frank was like, I never would have thought to think this could have been Miles. And he's like, yeah, he never crossed our mind. Gee, I wonder why. So now they're trying to understand why Miles would do this. And Frank was like, let's just go upstairs and talk to him. Here come Dee. Well, what we gonna say? Frank was like, I don't know what we gonna say, but we gotta go upstairs and say something. He was like, you know what? Let's just all go upstairs and figure this out together. So they get upstairs and they start talking to Miles, and Moesha starts to go in. She not taking no shorts. Mo's like, Daddy, you need to get that belt. Stop wasting time. And Frank was like, listen, son, I need you to talk to us. And he's just shrugging. He's not saying anything. And Mo's like, we need to know where you got this stuff from. Do you want to end up being like the bums and in front of the stores and all the things? And Frank was like, all right, child, let us handle this. And Moesha was like, I want to know where he got this stuff from. And then finally, Miles says,
why did you do this?
and he's just like, I don't know. And I'm sorry. And that's kind of where the episode ends. And here are my thoughts. It's really crazy how people looked at weed like crack back then. There were so many mistakes here. Dee really got on my nerves this episode. Okay. The way that she immediately went to Moesha as the culprit of this was insane to me. I understand that the relationship between all of them was very touch and go on the trust factor, but the fact that it was automatically Moesha and no one else was crazy. And the reason why they didn't think it to be Miles is because they never considered Miles. And by not just considered that he could smoke, but just consider him in general. When it came to anything tough or anything problematic in that household, it was like they shielded Miles from it. And instead of shielding him from it, they should have been involving him. And I get that he was significantly younger than Moesha. However, he wasn't young enough to understand that sometimes things happens in families and you have to address them. And sending him to his room every time something is going down was not the answer. I believe Miles' age ranged from elementary to middle school age during this series. And at that time, my mom and my dad were having real conversations with me. Of course, you try to protect your children and somewhat shelter them as much as you can to protect them. But at some point, you got to give them that real. And if every time something goes on, you are sending him to his room, how does he know that he is much involved with this family as everyone else? And then, of course, it's a television, so, we're not knowing whether or not after he's being sent to his room, if these things are then later discussed with him in a more childlike manner than it would be with a young adult like Moesha. Granted, Moesha was older, but Moesha was still a child too. But she was subjected to everything else. So I didn't understand why Miles didn't get that same treatment. I think that Frank was trying to give Moesha the benefit of the doubt in the beginning because he sincerely wanted to work on that trust that he felt like he lost with her in the previous season. And I feel like that's why we weren't seeing that initial, like, yeah, it's Moesha from him. But once D put that battery in his back, he was like, oh, for sure, let's go. Like, it must be her. Like, if D is saying it, it must be her. Then on top of that, in these last few months, life has really been circling around Mo and everything that she has going on with her parents. And Miles has been left out in the dark to essentially fend for himself and his own emotions. His sister isn't here. His parents are going through it with his sister, and he probably felt isolated, which probably made him act out. I like this episode for many reasons because it gave the character of Miles finally somewhat of a storyline. We got to see more of a personality from him. Everything was just, oh, I'm a kid and I'm going up to my room. At this point, there's real dialogue, there's real conversation that's being had. Granted, we don't want it to be because the kid is freaking in his room smoking weed, but it adds a human element to the show. And if I took nothing else from the episode, is that you have to be able to see all sides, and you can't assume, because once you assume, you make a what out of you. But let me know what you all think in the comments. If you haven't already, please go ahead and like this video. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and make sure you press that post notification bell so you know when I post videos next. Y'all, we are on our way to 5K. Thank you so much for subscribing to this channel. And thank you once again for joining me for another edition of The Culture Voyage. I'm Dear Ashley Grace, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.